Good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Working Together series, live with our friends at the Nativ Zoom room with Rabbi Karmi Ingber from Atlanta, Georgia. It's always a joy to have wide open Q&A. If you've got any questions for the rabbi or something that you really need an answer to, feel free to write it down in the chat box, whether on Facebook or YouTube, and I'll try and get that question to the rabbi. So let's just jump right in and see how Rabbi Ingber is doing today, and we'll go from there.
All right. Thank you so much, Dan. All right, good. So hi, everybody. It's been a few weeks. Haven't seen you all. Good to see you. So as you probably know, we were busy with the holiday of Passover. And that historically is the time that the Jews came out of Egypt. Very, very crucial time, because that is a time where God revealed himself in the world. Now, you've all heard about the 10 plagues. I don't know if you realize this, but there's an amazing thing they found in archaeology. Years ago, they found this writing, a hieroglyphic writing in Egypt that's describing what's happening. This person's writing, there's blood all over, and it's dated literally the time of the exodus of the Jews from Egypt. Of course, many archaeologists say, oh, it's somebody was writing fiction at the time, which I don't think fiction writing started for many years later. But it's very fascinating that they did find a archaeological find that lines up literally with the 10 plagues as they're happening. So, but understanding what the 10 plagues meant, and you've all heard of the Exodus of Egypt and the 10 plagues. What that was God revealing himself on a grand level, meaning beforehand you had individuals that found God. Now God is changing the way he runs the world to it's an obvious way there is a creator. And that changes everything, because all of a sudden you see. Now, that is the holiday of Passover. Passover is God is giving his calling card, so to speak, to show I created the world, I have complete control over the world, and I'm involved in the world. Those things we see through this process. Now, I want to explain the time we're in right now, because it's a very unique time. This time is called the time of the Omer. Now, what is that? So let me explain this, because even though I'm going to tell this to you in terms of the historical thing that happened, it is a time that is relevant all the time to every one of us. Let's try to understand this. Passover is the holiday of freedom. Now, it's no coincidence that it lines up with the spring. It's not a coincidence, because in the cycle of the year, there's a time where you feel closed up, that's the winter, and a time where you feel free. Passover, therefore, is lined up with the time of spring in the land of Israel, and therefore in the northern hemisphere. And that is now built into the mechanism of this time. There are people do spring cleaning. They want to start anew. The things are blossoming. Passover, we're trapped, we're stuck. God revealed himself and he took us out of Egypt. But now you have to understand what happened and where we are right now. From the time that God took the Jews out of Egypt, what was going to happen? There's a preparation that happened then to the most important thing that ever happened in human history. And what is that? That is 50 days later, after we left Egypt, God brought the entire Jewish nation to Mount Sinai and gave them the 10 commandments, spoke to them. They heard God speak. Now, I want to explain to you a second this concept, how this is different than everything else you've ever heard. Because if you look at every other religion in the world, without an exception, they all start the same way. How do they start? One guy had a vision. He said God spoke to him or something like that, and then he convinces people that this is what happened. And if he's charismatic enough, then at a certain point, he gets followers. I'm only pointing this out because it's modern, and people think things that happened 1,000 years ago. Well, that must be true because it happened 1,000 years ago. It's not true. But if you look at the story of, let's say, Joseph Smith, who was the founder of Mormonism, and he had this vision. He said that this angel named Uranus came to him and gave him these brass, these copper tablets, and he lost them. When he had this explanation, he was chased around America. He was in St. Louis. He ended up getting to Utah, and he got a few people that followed him, and then he created a whole religion about his statement of what happened. Now, when a guy claims that God spoke to him, there's a big problem with that. What's the problem? You can't prove if it's true or not. I don't know.
Right. Subjective.
It's subjective. It's not something that a person can go and will be caught with, because you can't really know if he's charismatic or convinced you. If he's not, he's not. There's only one nation that made a different claim, and only one that can, because it's true. The situation that we're talking about is God revealing himself to an entire nation. You can't falsify such a thing. Okay. So for example, let's say you live in, you're in Houston. Some of you in Houston. And let's say that everyone says, what happened yesterday? A giant UFO came down Houston, and everyone in the entire city went inside the UFO, and then they came out. So if someone started saying such a story, everyone would say, you're crazy. I know it didn't happen to me. When you want to make a false religion, the way to do it is not to say something that is easily contested. If I tell you what happened to me, you may not be able to argue with that. But if I tell you what happened to you, you'll say it's not true. So I would never do that. Nobody would make a claim that God spoke to you if he didn't do it. It's impossible. As a matter of fact, the Bible itself says that. In Deuteronomy, it says, God said, has there ever been such a thing, or will it ever be, that a nation will come along and say that God spoke to the entire nation? No one would do it. The Jewish people, we learn the Talmud, we're very critical, we argue back and forth, we try to understand the details of what's true. Could you imagine Moses coming along and telling there were about 3 million Jews? We know the army age, there were 603,550 army-aged males. So it's approximately 3 million people. Could you imagine Moshe coming along and saying, okay, here's the book, and it says that God spoke to us, and we all heard it, and it was incredible. It was amazing. People would say, what? You're making it up. It could never be. Even things that, certain historical facts today, nobody here has ever met Aristotle. I think if most people said, did a guy like Aristotle exist? You'd say, yeah. Some things are historical facts. That's a lot less. That's, the people who saw him in Greece and heard about some of his teachings, but you didn't see him. But there's certain things that are known in history. This was an historical event that happened to an entire nation. And if you would build a religion that wasn't true, you would never make that claim. So this moment of what's called the national revelation, when God speaks to the entire nation, is a turning point in history. It is the turning point in history. As a matter of fact, all nations knew it was happening when it was happening. We have a teaching that says there was a prophet at the time, a non-Jewish prophet named Bilam, and the people went to him and said, what is happening? The earth was shaking. There was something going on that they understood. And Bilam said, God is revealing himself to the Jewish people in the desert, giving them the Torah. So that is the idea of leaving Egypt, coming into freedom, was a preparation to go 50 days in the desert to receive the Torah, receive the 10 Commandments, which is not even, the 10 Commandments is a bad English translation. It's really more should be the 10 principles, called Dibros. Dibros are statements, and really they are the roots of all of the commandments. They're like the principles of all the commandments. So, but it was more than that. It was hearing God speak, which was a transformative moment for the Jewish nation and for the entire world. And it'll always be like that. So I want to understand how important this is. This is a moment where the whole world saw. I want to take a moment to contrast this, because in other religions, like I say, one person will say something and say, I had this vision, and they'll get followers. And then he may even say, I did a miracle and a lot of people saw it. Well, who are these people? Where are they? Can we interview them? No, they left. I don't know who they are. When you have the entire nation and you're saying that every single person had this experience, it would be a very bad idea to make that claim if it wasn't true. And B, you would never get away with it. So the reality is this was the moment, the culmination from leaving Egypt to getting to Mount Sinai, to hearing God speak. And by the way, as you all know, the craziest part is every religion, every religion agrees, pretty much agree to one thing. They all agree that God gave the Jews the Torah Mount Sinai. That's what the Bible says. What do they say happened? But then later on, he changed it. So this one said he changed it here, changed it there. So they all agree on one nexus, one point they all come to, which is that this did happen. So that is the time we're moving to. And now we're in the weeks, the 7 weeks between these 2 points in history, coming out of Egypt when God reveals himself to the culmination where he completely gives over the blueprint and the directions on how to live in this world. Before that, you need to be like Abraham, figure it out yourself. There were small groups of people, prophets, but now it's been revealed and everyone knows. I want to explain, ladies and gentlemen, now this period of time, because what I'm going to tell you now is crucial to understand this time, what we're doing now, but it happens in everything in everyone's lives. Let me explain. We left Egypt. We count 7 weeks, 49 days. The 50th day is the day that God reveals himself on Mount Sinai, as we'll talk more as we get closer to that. Now, let's talk about the number 7. There are 7 days of the week. Perhaps in our scale, there's 7 notes in the scale. 8th is the octave. 7 is a number that we see a lot in this reality. There's very many deep reasons for that. When you look at a 3-dimensional object, there are called 6 sides to the object. The 7th is called the object itself, what it's there for. The world in this natural form is a world of 7 days, 6 days of work. 7th is the Sabbath, 6 sides of a 3-dimensional object. The 7th is what its purpose, what it is itself. That's the cycle of 7. What we are doing now in these 49 days, 7 times 7, between leaving Egypt and getting to Mount Sinai is the following. When God revealed himself, we weren't on the greatest spiritual level. We were slaves in Egypt, and God in his loving kindness and the promise he made to the forefathers revealed himself and took us out. But in life, the job is not to get a free lunch. The job in life is to earn so you become a competent person, right? I've talked about this many times. People think I know there's a religion that has the idea of grace, but that's a mistake, because if I don't let you earn it because you're nothing, then you'll stay nothing. When you have your 2-year-old kid helping you do the dishes, all you want is the kid doesn't break the dishes, right? The 3-year-old's helping the dishes, they're not helping. They just, please don't break it. When the kid gets older, you want the kid to do something. So the idea here is not that God should give us, because that's great. It's wonderful. The whole purpose of the world is God wanted to give us. But if we remain in the capacity of incompetent people who just are getting, we are not going to feel good about ourselves. We're not going to have the satisfaction of making something. So when we come out of Egypt, that's like the gift. It's like a loan. If a guy gives you a $100,000 loan, and then he comes back in 2 years and says, I want my loan back, and the person just wasted the money, that's terrible. What do you want to do? You want to say, here, thank you for $100,000. I made it into now to $500,000, and here's your money back. I took what you gave me and I built with it. So the experience of coming out of Egypt was this revelation that was amazing. But then afterwards, it changed. And now we need to build ourselves 7 times 7, all of the physical world, all the natural world, try to improve ourselves, that we do it to be able to merit to get to that spiritual level on Mount Sinai where we receive the Torah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the phenomenon of life. It's inspiration and then perspiration. That's what it is. Everything works like that. You'll get all of a sudden an idea, this is really good, or things will happen in your life where something will open up and then it disappears. Even when you see the phenomenon of people falling in love, it's the same thing. It's the great mistake in America why young people have a great challenge in their marriage, because they start out, it felt great, they fell in love, and then what happened? Whoops, I fell out. If you fall in, you can fall out. It's like falling into a ditch. I just happened to fall in. You don't fall into love. What happens? What happens is that you get the experience that God shows you. This person is your other half, and you can build something special with them. And then that infatuation moment lasts for however long it lasts, and then it disappears. And then you're supposed to remember what that is and build it ourselves. Then you own it. Then you really own it. That's what it is. That's the experience. And everything works that way. And it's not because God can't give us forever. He can. But he says, I value you. I created you in this world so that you could have real pleasure by earning something. And if I just give it to you, so then you're a robot. We're beggars. We're not. But God gives it to us and shows us what it is. And then he says, okay, now that you know what it is, take the steps you need in life to attain that. That's the time we're in right now. We're going between Passover, when God revealed himself, and then that revelation of the greatest night when we came out of Egypt with the miracles, it kind of disappeared. Now all of a sudden we're back on our own. And how many times do we feel that way? Wow, it felt great. Now I don't know where I'm going. That's not a time to give up. That's a time to say, oh, wow, there's work that I need to do. It's like one of the rabbis gives an example that it's like if you're walking in the dark and you don't know where you're going, it's the dead of night, and you're trying to find this building or this palace, and then there's a lightning flash. So now you know where to go. But what happens after the lightning flash? You're back in the dark. Now you have to go. You've been shown how to get there, but you have to do that. That is what this time is about. It's a time of attaining ourselves. I'll just digress a moment here, because it's they have the people that talk about astrology, and they're usually a little bit not that truthful or that aware, but there is a lot of truth to certain things about the constellations and how God brings his flow down to the world. And those who knew how to read, there are different constellations. So there's 12 tribes of Israel, 12 months of the year, and there's the 12 essential constellations. There is something to it if you know about it. So this month today is the new moon, the Jewish new moon, called the month of Iyar, which in the signs is called the Taurus, the bull. And why is that? Because last month was like the sheep. You follow along, you follow the leader, but then this month you have to go and you have to work like a bull, but putting a yoke on and do it ourselves. The next month which is the month of Sivan, is called in the constellation this part has to be true, is month of Gemini, which is twins. That's when we come closer with God and us, because what happens is we have done something to earn it. That is this time. Now, I'll tell you one more piece about this time that you might be aware, may not be aware of. In the Jewish world today, although it was a very, very happy time in the past of the preparation from Passover to getting of the Torah, in the Jewish world today, we do a partial mourning period. We don't trim our beards, different things, don't cut our hair, different partial mourning. And the reason for that is there was a great, great rabbi named Rabbi Akiva. And during this period of time, he had 24,000 students, and they died. And so to this day, we do a partial mourning during this time. The whole nation does. Now, it's a little funny because I hate to say it, but we've had, 6 million Jews were killed in, the Holocaust 70 years ago. We have the pogroms from Ukraine for thousands of years. And so like 24,000 Jews dying is very terrible. But why is that made into a national mourning time? I don't want to explain this to you because I'll teach you one more principle here. Very important principle. These 24,000 people were meant to be the new leaders of the world. And therefore, when you could become something and you don't, there's an immediate flip side that you have to deal with. So this could have been an amazing time where he would have created the new generation of leaders. And there was a problem, I'll explain to you in a second, the problem that they had, which caused it that it turned from attaining something to the opposite. Let me explain what this means. Whenever you see you could do something very, very big and very, very good, there's also the danger of falling. And that's why you have to be very careful. A lot of times in life, you get to something and it's a big decision, and all these things like sort of come up and these problems come up. You know why it's coming up. And very often the answer is because it's an auspicious moment that if you do this, you could move high, to a higher level. And therefore you gotta be careful, because if you don't, you could fall also. It says these 24,000 people died. And this is, I'm gonna tell you how they died. This is unbelievable. It's very strange. It says they died because they didn't give honor one to the other. That's very strange. Their teacher was the great Rabbi Akiva, who was the most loving person imaginable. How could it be that his students didn't honor one another? It's not possible. I want to tell you something like this. They honored each other in the way, if we saw how they acted to one another, we would be amazed. But there's something else when you interact with someone. You know how sometimes you have family members and you won't talk to a stranger the way you talk to a family member. You know, a stranger, excuse me, I don't want to. A family member, hey, can you, pass the potatoes? What happened? Hey, also you can't say please. What happened here? But because they're familiar. We're very close. These rabbis felt they were so close that they were like one, and that's good, but you still have to go and say another person is a separate entity, and how close I feel to them, I have to give them that type of honor. So it was in their love and connection that they felt like one body, that there was a flaw of being able to, consider them separate enough to honor them in the way they each deserved. So this time between Passover and leave Egypt and getting the Torah is a very powerful time. It's a tremendous energy of moving to greatness. And today, unfortunately, because there was a time where we see that we didn't actually get there, the potential was there and we didn't do it. Today in the Jewish world, there is, as we get closer to getting the holiday of Shavuot, the day of Torah, the mourning stops. But during this period of time, there is a somewhat mourning because the 24,000 students of Akiva who were so great and could have gone to this highest level of the great leaders that they should have been, there was a flaw. That's the second lesson I want to teach us today. The second lesson is that every single time you're in a situation in life, it's an opportunity. And if you realize it and you say, this is an opportunity to grow, there's a flip side if you don't. If you don't take an opportunity, then something else happens because you can't stand still. You can't stand still in life. You have to. Everyone is. People tell me they're the same as they were. It's not true. It means they're less than they were, because you can't. You have to move. You got to do, and potential of doing. There's a risk, but that person has to try, has to pray, has the right intention, and then Hashem, God will help us to get there because that's the goal. And that was the first lesson we said today. The first lesson is the whole process in life is giving you an inspiration for the purpose of you taking it and you doing something with it so that you will have attained it and you'll be able to enjoy it fully because you made this good through your own efforts and not just taking from God as a gift without you actually being an active participant to bring out our own personal greatness, which is what God wants. That's my thought for the day. And we will open it up for questions on this and on this time of year and other ideas.